Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to Judge Williams.
Thank you, Travante, for such a wonderful introduction. You did a great job. Thank you so much. To Mayor Nuremberg, city and state elected official program participants, friends, and all who are assembled here today, good afternoon. There are too many elected officials, of course, as we've already seen, to call by name, but I do acknowledge your presence here today, and I thank you for attending this great and magnificent event. I also want to acknowledge and thank the co-chairs, Harold and Mary Moore, who have provided invaluable assistance to me in preparation for my visit here today. They have been absolutely, as I know you all know, awesome. Thank you. Let me also thank my wife, Anita, who has already been introduced, for being here with me today. She's traveled with me, and I have a familiar face in the audience, so thank you. It is indeed an honor and great privilege to be here in San Antonio, a city that is rich in history, full of culture, beauty, diverse in its population, and of course the city which is home to those San Antonio Spurs. I'm ashamed to say, as has been said, that this is my first visit, but Mayor, it won't be my last. Today and much of this weekend, this historic city, one born of its own struggle for freedom and independence, remembers and celebrates the life of a man who was a champion, a drum major, if you will, for individual rights and freedom. A man who challenged America that if it is to be great, then freedom must reign from everywhere, from the highest places to the lowest places. That man, of course, is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who left a legacy, a blueprint which requires us to work together in the construction of an American reality, which at the time of his death was a mere dream. It was an ambition, a goal, an end result to decades of struggles by an affected, marginalized, disenfranchised community of people. Now, to be sure, all of us have perhaps dreamed, held some vision or goal of what we someday want to be or even to possess. The truth of the matter is that while a dream or ambition may have originated with us individually, the making of a dream into a reality is a collective effort inclusive of other people and entities working together to make it so. Your theme this year correctly acknowledges that together we can be the dream. And so as we reflect upon such a powerful theme, let us be mindful of the spaces which we occupy and what we can bring to the equation to bolster and to unlock the dream. Personally, I've been privileged to occupy several positions, including as a military officer, law enforcement officer, lawyer, prosecutor, and numerous board memberships in various community organizations. All of these were very fulfilling and rewarding positions, but being a judge is the most impactful space that I've occupied in my lifetime. Impactful because my decisions literally affect the lives and impacts what the future might hold for those individuals who come before me. Are my decisions based on justice and fairness, or on some personal belief and perspective which clouds my judgment? Justice and fairness requires that I apply the law, but that I do so with impartiality, and that I recognize the humanity of the individuals whose life I'm about to impact. In many cases, I must temper justice and fairness with grace and mercy, recognizing that the case at hand is not the end of that individual's journey, but a speed bump and the roadway to a better day, a better future, and yes, even to the accomplishment of some dream or ambition. 1 year ago, I had what I believe to be a head-on collision with destiny. In 1955, I was not yet born when a 15-year-old black girl in the city of Montgomery, Alabama, encountered her speed bump that would impact her life, and ultimately the lives of so many others. On March 2nd, 1955, this courageous 15-year-old was on the city bus on her way from school. She was eventually asked to give up her seat to a white woman, but because she felt she had just as much of a right to the seat as the white woman, she refused to give up the seat. She had paid her fare and felt that she had a constitutional right to sit there. Ultimately, the police were called, and the 15-year-old was arrested on what might be considered made-up charges, including disorderly conduct and harassment. She was convicted and placed on probation for her courageous act of refusal. Now, this story may sound familiar to many of you, and it could easily be mistaken to be the story of Rosa Parks, who too was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the Montgomery city bus. Mrs. Parks' arrest, however, would happen in December, several months after the arrest of this 15-year-old girl. This unsung hero and precursor to Rosa Parks was Claudette Colvin. Mrs. Colvin's arrest, along with some others, provided the blueprint for the Montgomery bus boycott and the catalyst to a national civil rights movement. During that time, she was a 15-year-old pregnant girl and was not viewed as an ideal face for the movement. Mrs. Parks, however, was an ideal candidate because she was much older and she had connections with civil rights organizations. Claudette Colvin, along with 3 other named plaintiffs, filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Montgomery in the case of Browder v. Gale. And the federal court in Montgomery ultimately ruled that bus segregation is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, which the U.S. Supreme Court later affirmed. The federal court decision effectively ended the year-long bus boycott. My head-on collision with destiny was to be the judge to preside over a motion, a request by Ms. Claudette Colvin to expunge her arrest and conviction. An arrest and conviction that formed the genesis of a national movement and landmark desegregation case. I was being asked 66 years later, to correct the injustice of the arrest and conviction against Miss Claudette Colvin, who was now 82 years of age. The significance of this moment was not lost upon me. As a local Montgomery resident, I had heard of Claudette Colvin, but I had never imagined an opportunity such as this would present itself. An opportunity to pay homage to a pioneer who had blazed the trails that brought me to my present place in life. Had it not been for a Claudette Colvin and later a Rosa Parks, I and so many others would not have had the opportunities that have been afforded us. Being the youngest of 8 siblings, raised by a single mother and a housing project, I would not have been able to graduate college and law school and become a high-ranking military officer, lawyer, and now a circuit court judge. Indeed, this was a full circle moment. A hero in the civil rights movement who had been instrumental in breaking the barriers of segregation was now petitioning the court through me, an offspring and product of the civil rights movement, to correct an injustice. This arrest and conviction from 1955 was adjudicated by a local judiciary that looked and thought totally different than the way it did in 2021. In spite of what the U.S. Constitution guaranteed, Montgomery, Alabama in 1955 held no justice and therefore no fairness for a black person arrested for violating segregation or Jim Crow laws. Claudette Colvin's conviction had never been addressed, even in light of the federal court decision which outlaws the segregation of city buses. So on November 21st, 2021, I granted her request and issued the order that her arrest and conviction be expunged or otherwise destroyed. In that order, I noted it was granted for good cause and as a measure of statutory right and fairness to the said Claudette Colvin for what has since been recognized as a courageous act on her behalf and on the behalf of a community of affected people. Later, I had the honor of a lifetime to meet Miss Claudette Colvin on December 10th, 2021 at her son's home in Corpus Christi, Texas. It was an arranged surprise meeting, and there was instant emotion and gratification between both me and Ms. Colvin. She had no idea that it was an African-American judge who granted her the justice that she had so long deserved. Upon greeting her, I offered my apologies on behalf of the entire local judiciary for the act of injustice that had been perpetrated upon her in 1955. This was a remarkable story, which I just happened to be a part of, but it encapsulates the meaning of working together to make hope reality. Claudette Colvin had done a lot in the space she occupied to make civil rights real for those who were denied civil rights. But there was still this arrest and conviction on her record that made, according to her, made her feel less free and made her feel as though she was still under the authority of the court. It therefore fell to me, in my space, in my capacity, to help make her hope and her dream a reality after 66 years of waiting. Now, I use this story as a backdrop to amplify the fact that together we can be the dream. Claudette Colvin, as an individual, decided not to give up her seat, but the community took notice, came together and formed a collective movement that ended bus segregation. This collective movement evolved into a national movement to pursue civil rights and voting rights for blacks, while a movement to guarantee these rights to blacks. It was not just a black movement, but a together movement, inclusive of all colors and races of America. In essence, it was a movement for the human race. To quote Dr. King in his letter from the Birmingham jail, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly," unquote. This network of mutuality that he speaks so eloquently about is togetherness. Yes, together we can be the dream, as he told us about. But the truth of the matter is, together we must be the dream, for there is no other way to sustain it as a reality. As I look across this beautiful crowd, I know that many of you, like me, have lived the dream that Dr. King spoke of. We've lived our best life, ascending to some of the highest levels in our respective careers and professions, regardless of our race, but based on our character. We've held hands together, loved together, and cried together regardless of our race, because we believed in the humanity of one another. But I must go back to Dr. King's words: whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We must be mindful and vigilant of the fact that while the dream has been a reality for many of us, there are many for whom it is still just a dream. There are many more like Claudette Colvin who have been wrongfully convicted and imprisoned because of their skin color. Many who have been wrongfully detained and in some cases killed because of their skin color. Many who are stuck in poverty and homelessness because of their economic status. Many who live in communities filled with environmental waste because of their skin color. And many today who are targets of hate and violence because of their race and their lifestyle. So while many of us have been fortunate to live a good life and reach our God-given potential as we share in the dream, let us acknowledge that many Americans do not enjoy the dream. There is the American dream, which embodies our nation's set of ideals, in which freedom is inclusive of the opportunity to prosper and be successful, an opportunity for our families and our children to have social upward mobility through hard work with few obstacles. This American dream is rooted in our nation's Declaration of Independence, which holds that all men are created equal, with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a dream that is without restriction as to which American citizen it applies to or which American city it applies in. The American dream belongs to all of us, and all of us belongs to the American dream. And so, on August 28, 1963, in Washington, D.C., Dr. King expressed to the world the discontent of African Americans with their share of the American dream. Indeed, the Declaration of Independence had provided African Americans a check to cash in on the American dream. But each time they presented the check, it was returned and marked as insufficient funds. It was what some of us refer to as a bounce check. Dr. King proclaimed on behalf of African Americans that the time was now. In fact, it was the urgency of now, which demanded that the check be made good. Yes, there was awareness of the American dream, but Dr. King spoke of a dream that was really one of uniqueness to black folk, which was deeply rooted in the American dream. Before African Americans could achieve the American dream, they first had to achieve Dr. King's dream, which is inextricably linked to the American dream. There was need for America to allow all Americans to live out the true meaning that all men are created equal. An America that allowed blacks and whites to live together, govern together, love together, and fellowship together. And an America where every black man, woman, boy, and girl would be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. We must be the dream together, because as Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. Dr. King's dream was a dream of one America, an undivided America, a together America, a whole America. It was a dream of a truly united America, which could be strong in unity by embracing diversity rather than excluding diversity. This togetherness, which epitomizes the dream, must not be segmented. It must not only be in some neighborhoods, some cities, or some states, but it must be everywhere, just as freedom must be everywhere. Today, as in every year, we remember and celebrate Dr. King, and we do so not merely because of the man he was, but because of the hope he continues to inspire in us and the legacy he leaves for us. His dream motivates us to continue the legacy of social justice through civil rights, which an entire nation, through blood, sweat, and tears, fought for and won together. During this moment in our nation's history, people from every section of America came together, from the educated to the illiterate, from the rich to the poor, from the young to the old, black and white, they all came together, regardless of what had previously separated them. And so, as we commemorate and celebrate Dr. King, let us challenge and dedicate ourselves to become the beloved community symbolized by the heroes and sheroes of the civil rights movement. Though we may not be related by blood, together we can. Though we may not be the same race, together we can. Though we may not share the same religion, together we can. And though we may have different political ideology and viewpoints, together we can. Together we can, because in the beloved community, we are all interrelated by the love of our fellow human being. This interrelatedness of the beloved community allows us to better understand the inequities and injustice against any one of us, because inevitably it affects all of us. It allows us to truly be our brother's keepers because we care for those we love. In the words of Dr. King, an individual has not started living until he can rise above his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity, unquote. When we put aside individuality to suit our individual concerns and put on individual concerns with the collective concerns of humanity, we become the beloved community. Let us therefore turn our related togetherness into an interrelated togetherness, and our interrelated togetherness into a truly beloved community, so that we together can be the dream. In closing, I leave you with the words of Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? San Antonio, together let us all be the dream, and let us make it explosive. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. We want to present Judge Williams, wonderful, with a plaque. I'm going to ask the mayor, the MLK chair, Judge Sakai. Everybody will get a picture with him in a minute, but we got to keep it moving because they're going to open the streets about 4. Mayor Dennis, Dr. Piper, let's come up here. Let's get a picture. Anita, are you up here? Oh, okay. I was gonna say, come on now. Girl, you want to present it?
I'm gonna leave it there. On behalf of the City of San Antonio and the San Antonio Martin Luther King Commission, we honor Judge Calvin Williams for his participation this year in this year's wonderful event. He's come a long way. Listeners, as he made mention, this is his first visit ever to the City of San Antonio, and he promised the mayor it won't be the last. So on behalf of all of us, Judge Calvin, we present you with this wonderful plaque.
We good, Mr. Allen? Anybody need to squeeze in somewhere?